That's right. Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tiki here,
And Rohith Dar.
and welcome to Barbie-Cast 2023. Oh my god. All right. So Rohit, this has been a big weekend for us film nerds, has it not?
It has.
Oh man. You just got done seeing Oppenheimer this today. This afternoon.
My showtime was 150, so it was 3 hours, and the movie didn't start till like 10 or 20 minutes in. So it finished around 5 o'clock, and it's already 9:07 San Francisco. So it's been just like a few hours has passed, and then I saw Barbie yesterday. So
Okay.
yeah,
And I did the Barbenheimer double feature on Thursday, but then I also saw Barbie again last night as well. So.
Oh, okay. So you probably should have like a good good recall and maybe more things to add after two viewings of it.
Indeed. All right, so Rohit, I'm going to throw it to you. What did you think of this film?
Overall, I think this is maybe I might be too early or premature on my part. I think this is my favorite film of the year by far, and with my second pick being Past Lives. I think what Barbie set out to do in terms of the trailers, it looked fun, but I think people have certain ideas like, oh, this feels a lot like the Lego movie in terms of how the movie is being talked about by Greta Gerwig and the people involved, and that comparison wasn't helped by the fact that like Will Ferrell was part of the movie.
Literally, Will Ferrell could be playing the same character based on that trailer.
Yeah, but when watching the movie, it's strange. It's kind of hard to describe it, but the best way I can say this is like it's like a movie that has the aesthetics of like Gem the Holograms or like Spice World, but the subtext, the soul of the movie is like existential Pinocchio, like small toys, like just like movies that have like inanimate objects consider what it means to be human and striving to be human. If that makes sense. Which was, I have to say, in seeing how the movie plays out, it's like, man, this studio had a lot of like leeway, gave a lot of leeway for Greta Gerwig to do the movie the way she did it. And I think overall everyone's well casted. The highlights is Margot Robbie, but I think Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling's Ken. Ryan Gosling as Ken is like one of the most iconic characters. He.
Oh my god, dude! Yeah. He absolutely crushed it.
Yes, and
I honestly feel like it's like a Johnny Depp as Captain Jack Sparrow, sort of like lightning in a bottle casting moment that we are witnessing.
The production design is great. It's like in terms of Barbie Land, and then going the real world and having and to see. It's got a great visual, just aesthetics overall. Like the musical numbers are really well done. And three, like the overall message and the satire of it, it's like really, it's like when especially when we go to sort of what happens to the Kens when they take from like real world and implied to like Barbie's Dreamland, it is kind of really scary, spot on its observations about like male dynamics and like what and like the dude, and I think this is a movie. I saw one review. It's like, oh, I don't know, this movie that could be good for like kids, and it's like, I see a point where it's like, can this movie really be approachable for like elementary school kids? But I feel like if you're like late elementary school, early junior high, I think this movie is really valuable to watch, just in terms of like.
I was watching so many PG-13 movies when I was in like 4th grade. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I guess. I think the reviewer's point was that like about whether the young kid could understand like the messages and sort of I feel like
they don't need to understand everything. That's the beauty of this movie is that on surface level, it's just a very entertaining, fun ride.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And it's amazing that this movie is as well done as it is, because I think for some people there was a concern where it's like, oh, this is really camp and fun, and the concern was like it would be just all camp and fun and nothing like underneath the hood, and that wouldn't make it a bad movie per se. But the fact that the movie has a lot to say and does it in a really smart and fun way, is like, okay, Greta Gerwig, indie director, who's got Lady Bird and Little Women, and now has this. It's like she's already been like attached to like 2 Narnia projects on Netflix, but like any studio, like if I'm a studio executive and see that, it's like, okay, we all talk about how like, oh, female directors like need to be approached and need to be highlighted. Greta Gerwig, like she needs to, considering how much Zack Snyder, like just funny, I mentioned Zack Snyder was like his career blew up after like 300 and Watchmen. I feel like Greta Gerwig needs to be of that trajectory, not higher. And I am just the more I think of it, it's like I kind of want to like live in like the universe of Barbie. That's how like fun and just imaginative.
It's screaming for a theme park land.
Yeah, honestly, like this movie, I think because it's so popular, it won't have cult following. But I can imagine like a year or two after, like Barbie theme nights, where you know how like the Rocky Horror Picture Show, like people.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, it's on that trajectory.
Yeah, and it's so surprising because I wouldn't think that like I would have fun with the movie, but I am surprised at how much I love the movie, and I'm really excited for. I'm also really intrigued to what more can be done in this universe, but we can talk about more at length. But yeah, overall, great film.
All right, we have Kogias in the comments. He says, "I saw the film yesterday and loved it. One of my favorites of the year." Also says, I like it more than the Lego movie. It has a better plot and style of humor. Richard's Victims, always the comedian here. He says, I like that scene when Barbie finally finished the gadget and realized the gravity of her invention. Oh, God. Okay.
Movies are existential.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Richard's Victim says he actually did the double feature thing with Barbie and Oppenheimer. I'm going to be honest, very different movies, but I loved both. Yeah, Oppenheimer, I'm not, we're kind of in a weird situation with Oppenheimer right now where Dragon hasn't had a chance to see it yet. So I don't know when exactly we're doing the podcast on Oppenheimer, but hopefully we will do it soon. I have kind of divisive opinions about that movie. I like it, but we'll get there when we get there. Sure. This movie, it's not my favorite of the year just because, Rohit, I don't know if you've seen Asteroid City yet.
No, I saw Asteroid City.
Okay, that is my number one of the year. That's actually my favorite Wes Anderson movie, and Wes Anderson is one of my favorite filmmakers. So, like, I don't know. That movie just touched me on a really deep level.
That's like at like top 5.
With this, I totally like. I really do love it in a lot of areas. I think I don't quite think it's like a perfect movie. I think there's a couple elements that could have maybe come together a little tighter with the plot. Like, for example, Will Ferrell. I think Will Ferrell has a couple of the funniest gags in the movie, but at the same time, he kind of feels a little bit superfluous to the plot.
Sure.
But we'll break that all down. But all in all, I mean, you know, you're absolutely right. Like, the production design in this movie is just crazy. I have some notes on some of the supporting cast members in this movie that really surprised me. I mean, obviously, Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling, they're going to be the standouts. But there's one person in particular I'm like chomping at the bits to highlight.
Is it Alan? Michael Cera's Alan?
I love Michael Cera, but no, we'll get there. So yeah, I mean, I agree that Greta Gerwig is just on an upward trajectory. Like all of her films have been great, but I feel like all of her films have just gotten progressively better and better. And I'm right there with you. I think she's one of the most, exciting filmmakers working today.
Full disclosure, I've not seen either Lady Bird or Little Women, but I've seen
interesting.
No, I was thinking about watching them in lead up to Barbie. I just had the chance to do so, but now I really wanted to see them, and now I'm really excited to see what she can do with like the 2 Narnia films that she's attached to, because it's like Barbie, because Little Lady Bird, Little Women, Barbie. It's like these 3 films are different, but there is kind of like a common thread of like female centered story, coming of age, like, you know, what does it mean to be a woman, all that stuff. And it's like Narnia, like I read all the Narnia books, and nothing of my screams to me material specific to Greta Gerwig, and I don't know if like Gregor has an interesting angle about.
I would disagree just based on Little Women, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Little Women, I think, is the connective tissue with Narnia for her. But anyways, so yeah, I mean, I would give this film probably like an 8.5, like high 8, low 9. That's kind of the territory I'm in.
Yeah.
It's definitely like it's probably in my top 3 of the year. I don't think it's higher than Guardians Volume 3 at this point. Guardians Volume 3 just really touched me emotionally. But I will say this about the satire here. It was one of the things going into it that I was the most worried about, just because it's like I don't want to be preached to, right? Like I'm not one of those people that's going to freak out and think it's feminist propaganda or anything, but I don't want to be preached to. Yeah. And the thing about this movie is that I really feel like the thing that people are not understanding about this movie's sensibilities and its sense of humor is that it is a full-on satire with a capital S, making fun of literally everything that it's targeting. Like Barbie literally gets called a fascist in this movie. Like, do you?
I turned to
my. Really think that's feminist propaganda?
I turned to my friend on the right and I told him, this is what they got the Zoomer language down. They got the Zoomer rhetoric about Barbie down.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh my god, I was surprised. It was like, dang, like I felt so bad for Barbie, and it's like I think it's what's crazy. Like, I can understand both like the young girl's perspective, but also I can understand like as Barbie, you just feel so sad for her. Like, oh god.
So yeah, this is. I will say this for a nearly 2-hour movie, this is one of the most like perfectly paced films that I've seen in a long time. I mean, there is just not 1 ounce of wasted material here. And also, one last thing about my thesis. I was really worried about the real world stuff when I saw the trailer.
Sure.
My mind instantly went to like something like the Smurfs or something like that, or Masters of the Universe.
Yeah.
But I was so pleasantly surprised to find that the screen time in the real world is minimal. Like we're talking maybe like 20 minutes max. Well, like that was refreshing to me.
I mean, I think it was by design because the thing I think Greta Gerwig probably would realize is like if you spend too much time in the real world, like it slows down the pacing in the movie. 2, like you only need to like people already familiar quote unquote with the real world, so there's really not much time needed to establish like the dynamics of the world.
Yeah, tell that to all the other cartoon adaptations that did that exact same thing though. When we just wanted to spend time in the. I honestly think Sonic the Hedgehog is a really good example because they actually render like the Green Hill Zone of it all really well in his origin story, and I'm like, I just want to spend time there the whole movie. Yeah. Anyways,
yeah, no, and just what's funny is that like the real world. It's the real world, but I think just to make like the transition from Dreamland to Barbie Land to like the real world a little easier. The real world is slightly heightened, but it's not slightly like especially when you look at the Mattel environment. But but it's heightened in a way that like there's a verisimilitude of the real world, and there's a logic to it where it's like, oh, it's just randomness for the randomness sake. There's like a you can attune the rules and like the way things work in the real world. Is slightly different from that of Barbie Land, but it's still heightened, but which makes it,
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, just to go through some comments here. Richard's Victim says, I just read my comment. I'm going to be honest, very different movies. No, you don't say. But it's the perfect, like, they're thematically just so perfectly symmetrical, though. It's odd how that happened.
I just found out the other day that, like, The Dark Knight and Mamma Mia came out the same weekend.
Oh, I have a story about that. You know what? I will tell my Dark Knight Mamma Mia story just because Richard's Victims and Code Geass have not heard it, I don't think. You're gonna love this. Okay. So I was with like I think 3 of my friends. We were. This was. Do you remember midnight screenings, Rohith? Like actual midnight screenings?
Yes, I'm certainly old enough to remember. No, I remember doing midnight screenings for like the last Harry Potter movie, and I think did I see the Dark Knight midnight screening or I've definitely gone through a bunch of midnight screenings for films, like in the mid to late 2000s. And
But
then
what you have to realize about midnight screenings from back in the day, guys, is that you literally, it was like a half a day investment. Like you would line up out front of the theater at like maybe 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening, specifically because nobody wanted those front row seats. There was no reserved seating back in the day. You got your general ticket, and that was it. Like, that was the crazy part of midnight screenings.
Yeah.
So, if you're wanting a good seat, you got to show up early. So I was there with my friends. I was the one person who was ballsy enough to dress up. And of course, I am all caked out in Heath Ledger Joker makeup. And I got to say, to this day, it was a really good makeup job. I have a picture of it.
That's cool.
But like my friends and I, like we were well aware of the fact that Mamma Mia was not only premiering on the same day as The Dark Knight, but also having a midnight screening as well on the same night. And we found that just very, very entertaining as an idea. And so throughout the night, we were kind of stoking up other people in line about the Mamma Mia thing. And also, like, there were a few times where people would drive by and be like, hey, what are you guys in line for? And I'd be like, just very like loudly like, we're all going to go see Mamma Mia. So I was like kind of stoking up the crowd. And so, Rohit, this is one of the most beautiful moments of my life. I swear to God, this actually happened. I am not making this up.
Okay.
Literally, as we're all sitting there, midnight, the stroke of midnight comes, the first green screen, green band, this preview has been approved to play in front of us, in front of an audience, yada, yada, comes up. And I yell out just alone, Mamma Mia, into the crowd. And then another random guy in the back of the crowd says, here I go again. And then, Rohit, I swear to God, the whole theater erupts in, my, how can I forget you?
Oh my God, that is awesome.
It was amazing. It was genuinely one of the greatest moments of my life. I will never forget that.
That's awesome.
And that's the thing about midnight screenings, is that the level of energy at those things, like I kind of talked about this a little bit when Jacob Weil and I talked about Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest. The moment where fucking Barbossa walks down that staircase, Rohit, I swear to God, the crowd reaction to that was more intense than any of those Avengers movies. Like, it was just an insane moment. Anyways. Okay, let's get back to Barbie. I apologize, guys. I just had to get that out there as a story. Let's see. I wonder if there are people who prefer the front row seats, because I need to interview those people. You know what? I don't know if you guys have seen this, but there's actually a meme going on about like people screen capping Fandango seating charts where there's like 1 or 2 seats in the front row of Oppenheimer IMAX screenings, and they're just like, kind of like just screen capping like this is what they are seeing, and it's just like, like Alex DeLarge, like eyes prodded open.
I've seen a version of that meme where it's like just someone wearing goggles, and like the top image, and then the bottom image is like sharing white light as for a person that's like wearing goggles. It's like
Yes, I can say the Barbie movie, the screenings have been selling out like consistently in my local theater. Okay, so with the supporting cast, I need this is going to be chaos, guys. Code Geass and Richard's Victims, feel free to kind of like lead the conversation any way you want it to go, because honestly, I feel like we're just going to jump around. And should have read. Okay, fine. I'll read the rest of the comment. Those people has to ask what went wrong in their lives for their minds to be so twisted. The people who prefer front row seats. Okay. So yeah, feel free to to comment to if you want to guide the chat. But I need to shout out Kingsley Ben-Adir, because Kingsley Ben-Adir has been so freaking boring on Secret Invasion, and like, especially when I saw this movie a second time and I was able to really pinpoint his performance, what he's doing,
Mhm.
he is one of the best parts of the movie. I mean, he doesn't have a lot of lines, but just his physical performance, his physical comedy is just out of sight. Like, he's basically playing the LeFou to Ryan Gosling's Ken. Where he's just kind of like the right hand man who just wants to be best friends with Ryan Gosling's Ken.
Yeah.
So I want to highlight him before we get too deep into this, just because he really stood out to me on my second viewing.
Mm-hmm. I also just appreciated like I think Issa Rae's President Barbie was really fun.
She was one of my favorite Barbies. Yeah.
Oh God. A gag that I would really that I was surprised WB would okayed was like
the Mattel censorship.
No, the pregnant Barbie.
Oh yeah, Midge. Yeah, I mean,
Midge, yeah, sorry, Midge, and it's like, especially with like Will Ferrell's CEO coming out, it's like, oh yeah, we just discontinued that line.
Will Ferrell CEO is just actively just like, get her out of my sight.
Oh man, the thing that really won me over is that when the movie started and like, oh, like, you know, Margot Robbie wakes up and Barbie and all that stuff. Well, the beginning is like all the Barbie like commercials, and then you start with Margot Robbie waking up, she gets ready, and her turning on the shower head and no shower coming about.
Yes.
Like, oh my God, they're doing like they literally act like dolls, and it's like there's no water. It's like, oh,
the way that the food works, the water on the pool.
Yeah. Oh my God, I was just like, that is ingenious. Like, I feel like any other director would have just played it straight, and it's like, oh, it's just a practical world. But no, this was like a toy world, and it was especially amazing where like the beach, like the fact that like Ken just runs out to the waves and comes back, and it's like, you know, the beach is still a part of my life or whatnot. It's so the like the eternal rules and logic of this like toyetic world that is Barbie Land was really well done, and I think added a lot to the humor and just the world building of the movie.
One of my favorite like world building pieces with this movie is actually just the device in which you get back and forth from Barbie Land to the real world.
Oh, it's like you drive, you take a boat, you take a rocket, and then you bike, and you reverse.
All through like Wes Anderson vignettes.
Oh man, So I watched this movie, The Alamo Drafthouse, and you know, I don't know if you're familiar with The Alamo Drafthouse.
I'm familiar with that, yeah.
So like beforehand, there's always like here's some interesting movies and clips of shows or whatnot that like would be inspired or thematic or relevant or whatnot and all that. And it's like, and there was like the Indigo Girls song, and it's like, oh, like that's a weird thing to see. It's like I didn't think much of it, but then the movie, goes through, and then when the song is playing, it's like, oh, I can definitely tell this is a song that like Greta Gerwig liked, and then it's like, oh, this is very relevant, and then put it in the movie, and just the fact that like Barbie is singing it, and then you find out that's like, oh, like why, and then because initially it's like, okay, if this is a young girl like has this doll, like why would she know this? Like I guess maybe like she gets it from mom, or whatever. It's like, no, this is the mom is the one who's like a big Indigo Girls fan, and has imputed all her thoughts, both good and negative, to this Barbie doll. It's like, wow, this is just.
What I like about the world building is that I feel like it is both very well thought out and also very like childish in its logic, and just kind of has like sort of like like they literally say out loud, like, don't think about it too hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, roll with it. And I love that about it. It's like, because I feel like some movies like this just kind of get bogged down in the minutia of the world building details when it doesn't really need to. Like, there is a lot here with the world building, but you don't really need to think too hard about it. because at the end of the day, these are just essentially, children's toys.
Yeah, like that's why I feel like is kind of missing from a lot of world building is that like for like you're supposed to create a feel and an environment that has a sense of like logic and truth to it, but you're not trying to be like an architect or a city planner.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
I think that's why a lot of movies with a lot of expansive world building gets bogged down with exposition and often gets to problems with plot because sometimes you get over detailed and it's like, oh, but there's this thing that like you keep things like defined but not detailed is what you should go for world building for fantasy worlds. And this thing was like just was defined really well, and the aesthetics and the way the rules work, it's like, yeah, this is how girls would approach like having Barbie Land operate.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Just reading the comments here. Kogia says the rivalry between Ryan Gosling and Simu Liu's Kens cracked me up. I'd love to see more of them. Yeah, I think the next step for this franchise is definitely a Ken movie.
Oh my god, there's so much. Oh god, the Kens are when they get the ideas from the real world, and do like things that men do. It's like, oh my god, it's pretty spot on. And
so I have a comparison with the social satire.
Sure.
Just as far as like, this is going to sound weird, but I feel like if anyone's going to get this comparison, it's going to be you.
Okay.
So it's obviously very different subject matter, but actually, now that I think about it, it's kind of funny considering it ties into the Oppenheimer of it all. Mm-hmm. But I kind of get a little bit of a Strangelove vibe.
Yeah, I can
just as far as how aggressive it is.
I see that, especially with like the way certain. I think because like I think back to like Peter Sellers' like portrayal of like the German former Nazi scientist.
Right, exactly.
And the way he kind of plays up energy wise is definitely something I can see in Margot Robbie's performance, and also especially Kate McKinnon's performance as Weird Barbie. Kate McKinnon's Weird Barbie definitely like has a lot of Peter Sellers energy to it.
Yeah. No, I mean just as far as like how Strangelove is very much like a movie that is essentially a call to arms, but a very entertaining, very funny, relatively lighthearted call to arms.
Yeah, no, the way that those two satires, like Doctor Strangelove and Barbie, work in the sense that they are an absurd worlds, but the people inside absurd worlds don't realize absurd. They're playing it
exactly.
And that's what makes the satire, the humor, even more resonant. Because like they're just treated like the real world, but we the outsider can see the absurdity of the whole premise.
All right, going through the comments here. Richard's Victim says he'd love to see a Barbie versus the Lego movie analysis. I'm sure those kinds of video essays are going to pop up because honestly, I think the real battle would be just like a 3-way cage match between Barbie, Toy Story, and Lego.
I think
and then throw Small Soldiers in there as a wild card.
I think like Barbie kind of fits. I think Barbie, the Lego movie, and even and really more so the Lego Batman movie are kind of on the same wavelength in terms of that they're just taking this very like nostalgic thing and doing a satirized and deconstructing kind of like the silliness inherent in the premise of their parody, but at the end, like they sort of flip it to where it's a loving, it's a kind of a love letter to set property and to what that property can mean for a lot of people. And it's definitely especially true for all three, in the sense that like it starts out as a satire, and I think it's still sincere in being a satire, but I think it's also kind of like I can tell from all three movies that the people who make set three movies generally like and appreciate set property that they're satirizing.
Sure.
There often can be certain parodies or satires that are kind of like comes from people that don't understand or appreciate what they're satirizing, and thus the message can become of as mean-spirited. Whereas with this, it's like I can definitely imagine Greta Gerwig, growing up thinking that Barbie was fascist at the age she and 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 sort of at the age she's now can have a little bit more of a complex and nuanced understanding of what Barbie means, and the sense that like for these like it is kind of weird because all three are like movies are about like very corporate products, like things that are owned by multinational corporations, and the sense about how for these things that have very like complicated meanings, and for people to have complicated relations with them are valid, and sort of the point about it's kind of a very like postmodern way of looking at like art made in a commercial space where it's like once it's out in the public and for people to have like specific feelings, especially as part of childhood, as part of growing up, like there is the specific intended meaning or the meaning that's constructed from when the product comes out in terms of how it's made, in terms of how what's expected to portray. And then the other aspect is like how the people who take in said product or said movie or said, property, like receive and respond to it. And the fact that like all three movies have like childhood expectations or childhood like feelings about said properties, especially like Barbie and the Lego movie, it's such a unique so I think it's kind of unique to our specific time in pop culture where like we're so concerned about being too nostalgia ridden, but this is kind of like utilizing nostalgia in a way in which we're interrogating, what the intended or what's like the surface level, what's like, oh, this is just like something that's made for commercial reasoning, but still coming away with having a very, you know, pointed appreciation of it without not trying to like disavow that like the commercial nature of it. I think these are movies that really do well to critique and appreciate like modern popular culture, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah. Okay, it's like that quote where with satire you can either love the thing you're satirizing or hate it, but you have to understand it. Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
And with this movie, literally one of the taglines is like, if you love Barbie, this is the movie for you. If you hate Barbie, this is the movie for you. That was literally the tagline in the main trailer.
Yeah. And I'm just very curious as just like in terms of the way because this movie, but the movie has been developing for some several years, and there was iteration of it was going to be Amy Schumer comedy, and if Amy Schumer was the lead, the one joke that could not work was the joke. You remember the like the sideline? It's like, oh, I'm not stereotypically, pretty or typically blonde, and there's like the audio dialogue. It's like, if you want, it's studio
Note
executive.
to Warner Brothers, if you want this joke to work, do not cast Margot Robbie.
I just blew a gasket. That was like, oh my god, this is the right kind of self awareness where it's like, oh hey, we're acknowledging that things look stupid or whatever. It's like no, it's like it's appreciating like how people perceive this movie and just how
But I feel like that's one of the best parts of Margot Robbie's performance, though, is that she can, like, obviously she is very superficially beautiful as a person, obviously.
Yeah.
But she can also be incredibly vulnerable in this movie. And I love how she literally starts out where, she is just the personification of this icon in the opening, like, 10 minutes or so. And then just slowly starts to unravel over that first act. And then, very much goes through a journey after that. And she is incredibly vulnerable, and you do buy that in spite of the fact that she is Margot Robbie.
Yeah, I think part of it's like I can imagine. I've not seen the movie, but knowing what I know from what people told me about the movie, I could totally imagine Greta Gerwig really being full on board with Margot Robbie's Barbie if she watched I, Tonya. Because
Oh man, you'd like I, Tonya. Yeah, that is very much a kind of a similar performance. Yeah.
and I think honestly, like that's the thing that I think had to be right because there's a lot of actresses that are very pretty and can be vulnerable, but it's like there's a certain type of like prettiness or way you can be perceived as attractive.
Margot Robbie's also kind of got like she's always kind of had that street savvy kind of quality to her. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like with things like Wolf of Wall Street, and Harley Quinn. I think part of it's that like when Margot Robbie came into the scene, Like she's this very she quote unquote was the stereotypical blonde, attractive, and I think part of the thing was that like when you think about Barbies, they have a certain look. They're like very, skinny or close to skinny and like straight blonde hair. And like Margot Robbie, out of the very few actors Hollywood can provide that look and can play out that particular persona. I think like if this movie was made in the 2010s, I'm part of this like fan cast server in Discord, and I made this fan cast. It's like if Barbie came out sometime in the 2010s, I think Scarlett Johansson and Bradley Cooper would have been the Barbie and Ken, respectively, for that iteration of the movie. Because
Bradley Cooper, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, and Scarlett Johansson, like I think if this movie came out like 10 or 15 years ago, it would have been Scarlett Johansson that would have been playing the part, because I think Scarlett Johansson and Mark Robbie, at their respective stages of careers, were their kind of like not like Barbie and Persona, but just kind of the roles that they had, and the more substantive parts of them that were in indie roles. I think Margot Robbie, in terms of her career and what specifically she has undergone in terms of like playing the very attractive, Naomi in Wolf of Wall Street and having more layered performances and stuff like I, Tonya, and she's worked with like Damien Chazelle in Babylon, and
that to me, I don't know if you've seen Babylon. I still think like even above Barbie, I think that's probably the most impressive performance I've seen from her.
Yeah.
The physicality of that performance was just fucking outstanding.
Yeah. And I think her physicality probably is what helps help sell her performance as Barbie. Because think of it, it's like Margot Robbie has to, in certain scenes, just stand on her tiptoes and like have like a very like model like esque walk or just way of presenting. And there'd be very few actresses that can pull that off convincingly and not like come off as like, oh, this is someone that's just like trying to imitate a model walk or like how you expect Barbie to move. And what I appreciated was just that like I really appreciated that even though the other Barbies look very different from Margot Robbie, obviously Margot Robbie, stereotypical Barbie, it still felt to me that the actresses that were cast for the respective Barbies like still felt like Barbie in a sense.
I feel like that was one of the most impressive things about the ensemble as a whole is both the Barbies and the Kens. Mm-hmm. Like they had very distinct personalities from one another, and yet very, very like tonally almost identical deliveries, if that makes sense.
Which is kind of amazing because these are different actors of different ethnic backgrounds, different ages, different like types of roles that they perform in the past. There's not really one through line where like, I was like, okay, these actors have had similar roles or similar energies, and that would be something. But like, it's kind of interesting to me. Like,
I mean, Kingsley Ben-Adir's an up-and-comer, and Ryan Gosling is like a veteran.
Yeah, and then you have
paired together like perfectly.
Yeah, and the fact that like Margot Robbie is just having like a dynamic with like Arya Greenblatt, the young girl, and like America Ferrera. It was really interesting, just kind of like the different pairings and just different energies. And have you seen the show Sex Education, Tiki?
No.
So 3 actors from that show are in this movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and one of them, so Ncuti Gatwa, he's the black guy that's Kingsley Ben-Adir.
Okay, yeah, he was also a lot of fun. Yeah,
he's going to be playing the next iteration of the Doctor after David Tennant's the 14th.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah, and like Emma Mackey, she's the one brunette who people make jokes about looking a lot like Margot Robbie. And then there's one guy. His name is Carn Swindells. He's the guy who plays Aaron Dickens in Mattel. The intern guy, or the guy that's like has like a sweater vest on at Mattel. Yeah. And it's just so the thing what's also surprising to me is like with the needle drops, like the pop songs, I would feel like, oh man, this would get just so annoying quick. Because like, oh, this is very like, okay, all the big hits, but they all fit. And I was like, and considering like this year has been a year where like people complain about certain needle drops outside of Guardians 3, all like these are new songs made for the movie, but like all of these was like, oh, these are just like, catchy pop songs. Like, well, if you're in Barbie Land, what else will be playing besides catchy pop songs, right? And it just works. It just kind of just fit, all the ambiance really works well, and the whole like Barbie, Margot Robbie's Barbie realizing like like the idea of death, and just the mood just shuts down was just great comedic timing.
Mm. Okay, I want to highlight a few of my favorite lines just because they really stick out to me, and I don't want them to get lost in the conversation.
Sure.
Two of them come from Will Ferrell, kind of like at the beginning and end of his arc.
Uh-huh.
Number one, the whole thing. First of all, Will Ferrell. We should probably talk about him because he is the element of the movie that I'm most mixed on, but at the same time, like I'm very entertained by his presence, and I feel like what people are kind of misinterpreting with his performance. I feel like his performance is very self-aware of the fact that he is essentially doing everything that Will Ferrell from like 2003 was known to do, but dialing it up even further. Did you get that?
Yeah, I definitely can see that, especially with like the yelling and just like when he's running, it's like, oh yeah, I can imagine Will Ferrell running like that.
Like, I feel like it's very self-aware of the fact that Will Ferrell is like just basically playing himself as an executive.
Oh yeah, and
but the line, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And what's really cool about it is that like when Barbie and Ken go into the real world, and just Barbie's like slowing realizations, like, oh, I just feel really, I don't know, like uncomfortable, and it's like, oh, like. And I just feel like there's like a hint of violence around the area. It's like, oh my god, this is just
just Gosling, his reactions to just like he is just so like how excited he gets over the person asking him the time.
and then he gets like 3 watches.
Oh my god.
Oh man, it was so.
There are some Gosling lines that were great. I'm struggling to remember exactly what he says, but something like I shall make my fortune there or something like that. Oh god. But back to the line with Ferrell though. When he's just going off about like, like the two women executives that have been at Mattel and how Mattel is just like, like the heart of Mattel is women. Mm-hmm. And I have like a lot of my friends are Jewish.
That line. Oh man, I was surprised that they kept that line.
Yeah, no, that's definitely one of those sharp lines where it kind of catches you off guard.
Okay, favorite Ken line for me. I just remember now. It's like he tells Barbie, he's like, oh, when I realized that the patriarchy wasn't about horses, I just stopped paying attention to it, and it's just like.
I mean, that actually kind of tracks if you look at his performance. He does kind of check out relatively quickly.
I think there's probably a point to it because it's like, I think Greta's point, and I think this is very well portrayed with the Kens, is like they're doing all this masculine stuff, but the thing about masculinity and patriarchy, it's like it only works when women are in the picture to compete for or to rule over. And I think once the women are there, that's like, well, like once the women are there, they're like, okay, we're just going to be doing things our way in our Mojo Dojo Casa house. And just the delivery of that, just eyes like, oh my God.
The fact that is actually probably one of my favorite pieces of world building is the fact that like the Mojo Dojo Casa houses just instantly go, they're like instantly a sellout item in the real world.
And all the mini
just like, it's happening. The weird stuff is happening.
No. It's like Ryan Gosling's Ken. It's like, and mini fridge is such a bad idea. They're too small, and it's like in the freezer is like it is like broken or something like that. It's like, oh my God, this is just. I wish like there could have been more stuff that the Kens did just to like signal like male dynamics. But I think what they had was like, oh, this is so good, and also. the
Well, I mean,
Barbie.
I think they have quite a lot. Like they have the whole, the helping you with sports. The Photoshop thing was particularly like I feel like that was very much drawn from real world experience. The whole, well, first of all, you got to select a layer.
No. So it's like, oh, I've never seen The Godfather. You never seen The Godfather?
Oh God! And, I literally
Wow.
said in the theater, like that's literally me. I feel called out.
Dude, I felt called out when there was like, oh, I don't know how to do this, and it's like, oh my god. I remember in high school,
uh,
I was part of this like program, academic, club thing, and one of the requirements or things that was like, required of us or asked was like, hey, just help out with tutoring, and like during like lunch when there's people that were going on, I would just always go for the girl that was having trouble, and it's
oh
just like
God!
it was just like, oh, I'm just gonna be like the kid. I think it's like
But the
it's
thing
like
with the
this,
call outs is like I appreciate the call out. You know what I mean? It's like
and it
that is something that I feel like I am trying slowly but surely to get better at is like the whole thing where it's like, ooh, if your pop culture literacy doesn't match mine, it's like I don't
or
um
like the guy that's just trying to help, that's just trying to be that. I think it speaks to kind of a. I think all those things were especially well pointed, because if you think to how Ken feels about Barbie and how he feels about himself at the beginning, like Ken just feels like not necessarily masculine, but just feels like he doesn't feel centered or just like appreciated in his own person. And when he goes to the real world, he thinks it's like, oh, like this is the world where like men run things, and then takes it to the Barbie land, and it's like, hey, we get to run things that matter. And I think the way that was resolved, it's like, hey, can Ken and the other Kens can just live, in dreamland, and it wasn't like return back to status quo. It was more like, okay, we need to. I think the point about like, oh, Kens have just as much freedom as like women in the real world was a very smart and pointed answer, because then it's
totally,
like,
totally.
because then at that point it's like, if you're paying attention and receiving good faith the satire of the movie, it's like, okay, the fact that the men in Barbie Land have the same rights and opportunities as women in the real world, and you feel that's not enough, that's a sign that maybe you should do something about the real world.
Exactly, exactly. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I love that the movie ends with, it's like there, like you said, it's not the status quo, but there's still kind of some work to do.
Yeah, and that was like really like so such an important point to be made, because I think a lesser version of this movie would have been like, oh, like girl power, female empowerment, and that's just it. But like there was more to it beyond just like, hey, Barbie's a girl boss, and we just she's a girl boss harder. It's like, no, like
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
this was a movie about
I
someone.
mean, if you think about it, like the real, like stereotypical Barbie in this movie, pretty much like shuts down for a large part of the third act. Like as she says herself, it's very much a team effort. She is not girl bossy in anything. You know what
No,
I mean?
and I think that's probably why Greta Gerwig took on the project, because she probably is like, hey, like the whole like for the whole point that I think Gerwig was making with Barbie is that like to be a woman is really, fucking hard just to live as you are in the real world. And you can't just like say like, oh, I'm going to do well and just rise up and that's it. It's like, I think it was a very pointed thing to have America Ferrera's character, like not only does she just have like problems because of a woman, but it's like real feelings about like existential purpose and dread and all that.
Hmm.
And it's like, if if you're like looking at this movie and thinking, man, that's not fun to be in, and those feelings are not really brought up in like popular like women centered movies, because like, oh, it's all about like being sister and fun. It's like the fact that was at the center, and for Barbie to like have self realization and going through that and wanting to become human, even in spite of the negative feelings she felt being a human, that was such a great way to end her story arc, because I think the purpose of like, hey, being a woman is not always great all the time, but having the feelings of existential angst and worries about death and purpose and all that, like there's still something beautiful to get out of from that, and just her closing her eyes and seeing all like the footage of like girls just women just having fun and all that. I was like, okay, that's like a really like life affirming message that's not done in a super corny or saccharine way.
Sure, sure. Let's see. So, my biggest laugh in the movie was a Ken line, a Ken moment, where Barbie is going over. It's like in the third act, Barbie's trying to trick him as far as like, she's agreeing to be his long distance, no low stakes, no commitment girlfriend or whatever.
Yeah.
And and she's like agreeing to it, and then he's like, give me a moment. He just goes inside the house and he just yells out, "Sublime!" I'm just like, oh my god, that is so freaking random.
So my I think one of the big laughs for me was like when Barbie's like, "Oh, I just come back to Kenland and there's all this like weird energy." And I suddenly had this like obsession over Zack Snyder's Justice League. And my friend who is like a big, ride or die Zack Snyder DCU fan, he laughed at that line. And oh my god, that's like the joke. The line wasn't done in a way to like undermine the movie or Zack Snyder, but it's like it was very pointed. It's like, yeah, Zack Snyder's a really broy like
there is a very particular culture with Zack Snyder. Yes.
Yeah.
Let's see, and then the other like kind of like the Will Ferrell quote that kind of bookends that I really laughed at was the whole like America Ferrera just kind of casually approaches him with an idea like towards the end, and he just this delivery, it's almost like Gene Wilder and Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory or something. He's like, "Tell me your dreams, child." I'm just like, oh my god, where the fuck did that wording even come from? Damn, tell me your dreams, child.
I just realized, I don't know if I just realized it's just now, like the way Ken looks is dressed after like getting ideas from the real world. Is it not me, or does it not feel like he watched Fight Club and was inspired by his?
Oh no, that's a really good pull, and I think Fight Club is very much like the toxic masculinity movie.
It's the film bro movie, man.
Yeah. Oh man. That's a great pool. I'm actually kind of surprised it wasn't directly referenced. Okay, we got to talk about Michael Cera because I went through a big Michael Cera phase when I was in high school and early college, honestly. Scott Pilgrim versus the World, Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist, Juno. Let's see, what else? Youth in Revolt, I actually think is kind of like, it's a very problematic movie, but it's a good performance from him.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was, I kind of wish Alan had a little bit more to do. I feel like they set him up a couple times as like more of a player than he ends up being. Like when he's in the car with America Ferrera and the daughter, I'm thinking like, oh, great, awesome. We're going to get like a full Michael Cera subplot here, but he kind of just blends into the background with the other Barbies, which I guess is sort of the point where Alan is very much more of a Barbie than a Ken.
Yeah,
but I don't know. I would have liked to see a couple more moments with him, but at the same time, like, let me get this straight. Let me make this clear. I am Alan. I am not a Ken. I am an Alan. Like, I am just the guy that's just kind of like awkwardly there, floating around. I don't really have much of an opinion when it comes to crowd situations. So Michael Cera very much spoke to me. And I think it's kind of crazy how he spoke to me like on the same level as like a 32-year-old that he did when I was like 20 when Scott Pilgrim came out. So, okay, let's see. I feel like we're kind of we've highlighted quite a lot already. The whole thing about the real world sort of only being sort of the you only really get a taste of it. You really don't dwell on it at all.
I love like the getting arrested twice.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, that's a really fun, like just like they're wearing different outfits, and I really also appreciated when Ken is off doing his own thing. Oh, what I love is the montage of Ken learning about like the patriarchy, and like the scene that comes to mind is like he's seeing like the two executives just like dismissing this one female assistant, and he's
And he just gives like the whole like no. Like they shoo her away. It's like, yeah, that's right. That's how you do it.
yeah, and he has like a bunch of books like Horses Men Rule, and it's just like, oh my god, he's just
I love how he's more obsessed with horses in this movie than Barbie is.
because they're extensions of men.
Right. Oh man! And by the way,
the
physicality of all the Kens doing their stupid little gallop at the
yes, and they have like a bunch of Humvees like in Kendom. It's just I love. Okay, speaking of vehicles, I love like both the two times the Barbie car just flipped, and it was very much like flipped like how you would imagine a toy car would flip. And it was shot that way. It's great.
Okay, let's see. You briefly touched on Kate McKinnon, but I just want to address like the whole plot line with Weird Barbie. Definitely one of the best. Again, I keep saying this, but it's one of the best pieces of world building. I love the idea that it's like there could be other. Like, I don't know. Like, I think maybe like she represents every Barbie that has been played with too hard.
Yeah.
Like they all just kind of like blend into her as a personality, I guess. But I love how it's one of those things where it's like you can't really think about it too hard. Mm-hmm. The design of her house, I think, is probably the best set in the whole movie.
It looks like a Barbie dream house that was played through too many times and has like wear and tear. But I could definitely imagine an executive just utilizing that to make like a very like abstract dream house, and that would have sold to like the weird kids.
It gives me a very Pee-wee's Playhouse vibe, especially because it's on a hill and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And Kate McKinnon, I'm not usually that big of a fan of her comedy, but I don't know, something about this character in particular just really worked.
It fits with the kind of energy she usually puts out, because I could definitely understand that, like, for say like other movies where Kate McKinnon just is like acting or just like doing funny.
Like, honestly, I hate to like go to this well because it's, I was very sick of the conversation when this movie came out, but Ghostbusters kind of comes to mind.
Yeah, no, and
the humor being a little out of place in that movie.
No, I haven't seen the 2016 Ghostbusters, but I can totally understand like when you see her like the SNL parts, and the best parts of Kate McKinnon is that like she is crazy with a point, and then for other like skits that really don't know how to like hone in on that craziness, she'll just kind of be like doing a bit for a little while. And this was like
Johnny Depp in his post Pirates of the Caribbean phase, where he was just kind of like vaguely playing Jack Sparrow over and over.
Yeah, and this was just like Weird Barbie. Like the idea of it I would imagine would have been a character that like Kate McKinnon would have played in SNL at the height of her like SNL career. So this was just perfect casting, and also the fact that
Kristen Shaw would have been good in this role too.
Yeah, she would have been good as well. I wonder if it's like, man, I feel like Kristen Wiig would have done something interesting with Weird Barbie. It wouldn't be as animated as Kate McKinnon would. I think she would have been.
Well, I mean, Kate McKinnon, her physicality is like a big part of the performance.
True, and I think that works because, like, if you contrast with the regular Barbies, they're all kind of like stiff or just normal walking posture, good posture, all that stuff. Whereas Weird Barbie, she's like all out of sorts. So like her doing like the splits against the wall is like, oh, okay, like she's leaning into that kind of like off kilter,
Well, I love the physicality of it, where it's like, when you do play with Barbies, like I actually remember like, the few times I would play with Barbies with my sister, it would be like the bending the legs into the splits position. That was very much something that you would do with the dolls.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh my god. I'm
What?
just looking at the Wikipedia entry for Ruth Handler, and they were not. And I didn't realize.
Oh, there could probably be a whole movie about that. Yeah.
Oh my god! I thought I was like, oh, what's with the whole thing about the IRS taxes? And it's like, oh, they were no, like she was like real life Ruth Handler was apparently she was charged with fraud and false reporting from the Securities and Exchange Commission, and it was fined X amount of dollars since the community service. And it's like, okay, so like this is just like this was like, so her having iris issues, the fictional Ruth Handler was not too far off from wow. That's
What do you think of her though? She's one of the few characters we haven't really gotten into yet.
yeah. I was pleasantly delighted to see Rhea Perlman play Ruth Handler.
By the way, just because she's kind of coming up, I just wanted to mention I saw this on social media. I thought it was very nice. Rhea Perlman and Danny DeVito, they actually just had their first grandchild together.
Oh, that's sweet.
Isn't that sweet?
Yeah.
All right. But yeah, I think she was a really smart addition. Like very much kind of like she ties a lot of the themes together. I think, especially that final scene with her and Margot Robbie.
Yes.
And I do like the gag of her just like being a ghost that just kind of has like occupancy in the Mattel offices. Again, it's kind of like a don't think too hard about it sort of world building thing.
But you know what it kind of reminds me of? It kind of reminds me of the lady from the Matrix sequels. Not the Matrix, but like the caretaker, the woman that like has the kids, the bald kids. You know what I'm talking about for the Matrix?
Yes.
Yes, I kind of got that that energy from her, where she was like a very wise woman that like saw like the simulation or like knew sort of the underpinnings of this reality.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You know what we do need to talk about is the big musical number. I'm just Ken.
This was I saw.
If this doesn't get nominated for Best Original Song at the Oscars, you are doing it wrong, Academy. How can you not have this song performed at your award show? Come on now.
It was such a great song, and the way I saw the music video being circulated around, and I didn't want to watch it because I just wanted to have my first experience just watching it in the theater.
I kind of wish I had the restraint that you had, but I didn't.
And oh my god, this was just so like funny and so melodramatic, but it just didn't like the song didn't go out too long, and it was just the right kind of energy. And what was funny about it was that like in the lead up to the movie when I'm watching that on Draft House, there was like video footage of like Ryan Gosling in his old like Mickey Mouse Clubhouse days. And like just him dancing. Oh, that's cute. And then seeing Ryan Gosling dancing with like Simu Liu, Margot Robbie, and all them, and it's like, oh, this is such a like.
One of the shots in the trailer that got me the most hyped was the shot of like Gosling and Simu Liu doing the rock paper scissors against each other with against that kind of like West Side Story backdrop.
Yeah. Yes.
And that did not disappoint. That moment did not.
Was that
choreography there?
So when they were wearing like the black getup, so they, I thought that was a Grease reference.
Yeah, it could have been. It could have been. I could see that.
Yeah, because I think I remember seeing like in the lead up in the previews, the footage for leading up to the movie was like Grease, but I think West Side Story also because I think. I remember Greta Gerwig came out with a list of movies to like watch that inspired Barbie.
Yeah.
But yeah, that whole sequence was just so, and what especially was just so funny about the beach off when like freaking Ryan Gosling, Simu Liu are just like Dragon Ball Zing like. I was just like, oh my god, this is just ridiculously well done.
And that word, I mean, it's ridiculous, but it's ridiculous in the best way. All right, comments here. Kogias, he's saying, I love Zack Snyder's Justice League, um, but the joke about it amused me rather than annoyed me. I was thinking that Ryan Gosling looked like an older Fred Jones from Scooby Doo. That he would be a solid casting choice for Fred. I could see that. Let's see. He's saying the acting in this film was top notch. I wonder if anyone will get nominated for an award. I think Gosling and Margot Robbie both have pretty good chances, honestly.
I feel like this is a movie that will maybe get nominations, like the visual, in the technical side of the Oscars, like best production design, art design, best song, original song, and like stuff like that. I don't know if any acting nomination. I feel like this movie should get like a best original screenplay nom because it's like so well done and
It's getting legitimate best picture hype, actually. Which I'm not sure if I'm fully buying into just because of the debacle of the Lego movie not getting nominated for best animated movie. But I mean, I could, like, if they want to go the route of having more popular films, like, this would very much be the movie to nominate.
Well, because like the best picture category is like 9 or 10 movies, and depending upon how the second half of the year shakes out, like I think
we might not even be getting stuff like Dune Part 2. Like, there's conversations about that getting moved, so.
Yeah, that's true. So it might be, so man, that's God, the actor strike is just such a, I mean, it's very necessary, but man, I'm just thinking just logistically. Like,
I'm just very frustrated that the studios are being so stubborn about it. That's all I can say.
Yeah. I agree. It's just going to be, hopefully it won't be too long, but if it's going to be long, hopefully the studios will appreciate the talent that makes their movies so and shows. Anyway,
so I really think that if anything else, I would hope that Ryan Gosling is at least in consideration for best supporting actor, because I mean, he just, like I said, I really think that he's got that sort of like, Jack Sparrow energy where it's just like an instantly iconic performance.
honestly, I would not be mad if he did get nominated because I think about, I can't think of any other actors or that could outshine or beat out his spot in the best supporting actor category, because I don't think like any films that had that kind of like, I could see like it being like, okay, there's like one person from the Air movie, there's like Ryan Gosling from Barbie.
I could see the husband from Past Lives.
Yeah, that would be there.
Probably Robert
Oh,
Downey Jr. and Oppenheimer.
probably one of the Asteroid City folks.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't think any. I mean, I love Asteroid City. I don't think it's going to do very well at the Oscars. It's just a very niche movie.
That's true, but it gets
Probably Killers of the Flower Moon. I don't even know. Like, probably like a De Niro or something from that.
Yeah, I think probably America. Oh, Kogi, yes, America Ferrera deserves supporting actress. Nailed her big speech, and Ryan Gosling should get a Best Actor nomination, and Margot Robbie for Best Actress.
Margot Robbie, I would love for her to get it. I just don't necessarily like. I think the Academy would focus more on Gosling just because his performance is such a scene stealer.
Yeah, and it's like I feel like for people that may not even like or love this movie, I think they can all attest to Ryan Gosling being the highlight.
Oh, totally. America Ferrera would be an interesting one. I mean, that's definitely like, I don't think there's that much of a chance, but it'd be an interesting wild card if she did get in. One thing I want to highlight with America Ferrera, as far as that speech you mentioned, I think it's really interesting that we have a speech from this year that is going over very well generally. I mean, there's, the Ben Shapiro idiots out there, but, generally speaking, with the general audiences, the speech is going over like gangbusters.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what it's a really interesting mirror image of?
What?
that infamous She-Hulk monologue.
In what sense? I'm curious. Like, what's the linkage? If
you know what monologue I'm talking about, right?
That her conversation.
The whole like,
yeah.
the whole like, I'm angry every day, Bruce. Blah blah blah. I'm angry when I get catcalled. Da 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 da.
Yeah.
And it's like the difference is that in that moment, it's just literally the screenwriter kind of just throwing out virtue single buzzwords. Whereas the America Ferrera monologue is very much written from a real world place. Like, you can tell this is a real woman writing very much almost painfully honestly from the heart.
I mean, I kind of feel like the She-Hulk thing was people gave way too much heat for that, and I think like the way it was written wasn't bad. I'll say this: I think why you probably have a different reaction to America Ferrera's monologue as compared to Jen's monologue in She-Hulk is that for America Ferrera, she's speaking out loud. She's not directing anyone. So I feel like that probably like it's just her. It's less about expressing.
I feel like the She-Hulk thing was also kind of like, it was like sort of like the reason why that blew up as much as it did, I think, was because people like throughout phase 4 were starting to get a sense of like, that we're kind of just talking down to the mainline heroes. And I mean, like, I'll be honest with you, I haven't even seen that episode. I haven't really watched any of She-Hulk. I literally watched one random episode in the middle of the season to recap it with Dragon. But I don't really mind it, except I do think that it's frustrating that it's specifically targeted at Bruce. And it's frustrating that Bruce becomes such a punching bag and keep in mind, I haven't seen the context for the episode and why she might be frustrated with him, but it's like, I don't know. It's just very frustrating to me as a big fan of Mark Ruffalo's Hulk, as everyone was when he first came on the scene in the original Avengers movie. It was like, I think he was like such a breath of fresh air compared to Edward Norton. Like, I love Edward Norton, but he was very miscast as Bruce Banner. And Ruffalo comes on the scene, and he is equal parts like a warm, kind of calming presence, but also has very much like an edge and a dark side, and you can tell this dude has been through hell.
Yeah.
And now his character is just basically nothing. Like, they have watered his character down to nothing.
I understand for people that aren't big fans of. I think the Smart Hulk is interesting, and I think the way it's done is pretty, an interesting way of looking at like the Bruce Hulk relationship. I can understand for fans that maybe want a more dramatic and more serious take on the Hulk, especially in light of recent runs that like the Immortal Hulk, all that stuff. I'll say for this, if for that episode and watching She-Hulk, there's a consistent point made about how like Jen has like is very arrogant and a little bit up her own ass, if you will, and she kind of suffers comedically for it, and so that after that moment there's like a confrontation, and the show, at least to me, doesn't make Jen out to be the right person. Like that the way she delivers it and then what happens, she's just very frustrated with Bruce because of her training to be She-Hulk.
Yeah, like I said, I don't really have context for that.
So that was a low. That was just Jen, in a low point. That was her like desperately criticizing Bruce for anything sexist or whatever. She was just kind of just lashing out.
But I feel like why the America Ferrera monologue is resonating so deeply. I mean, I think you are right that the fact that it's not just venting to someone is definitely helps, but I just think like you can just you can just like post that monologue out of context on Facebook and it would be like, hell yeah, you know, like that is a great message. You can't really do that with the She-Hulk monologue.
I mean, I would hope that. I don't know if maybe just the past few years has kind of maybe questioned whether that would be like, here's the thing, like in terms of our modern culture and the politics, and not to, you and I know, you know what I'm talking about, Tiki, in terms of sort of the heightened polarized nature of our discourse. I would hope that the American Forever monologue would be well received. I didn't think it would be well received, but I think it's just in terms of how people consume media, I think like anything else, it will just be unfortunately filtered. So,
well, like I said, I really think that in the case of Barbie, like beyond just the pathetic Ben Shapiro losers of the world, and I don't want to discredit anyone who actually has like legitimate like non-political reasons to not like this movie, like if they think it's just like, you know, too much of a satire overload or the plot doesn't come together for them. Like I think film is subjective and that's valid, but you know, I think if you're like going after this movie because of the message, it's Barbie. I mean, what the hell are you, Rohit? That's what I was so baffled, you know, over the weekend, like before the actual movie came out, but when the critics had seen it, the whole like the 11th hour whispers of the feminist propaganda. I'm like, I'm sure it's not propaganda. Like, I'm sure that's extreme, but it's Barbie, dude. Like, yeah, it's gonna be feminist. What the fuck were you expecting? Like, were you really expecting the Barbie movie to not be feminist? Like, I inherently do not get that logic.
It's like going into a Clint Eastwood or Michael Bay movie and being surprised by like,
right.
the levels of violence and or patriarchy.
Like, man, there's a lot of testosterone in this movie. God. Yeah, I really did not get the claim that the Barbie movie hates all men drives me batty. Yeah, the most likable character is Ken. People are trying to claim that Ken is like the villain, and you know what? On some level, kind of, but at the same time, he is still like super likable, and I feel like the reason why the "I'm Just Ken" song is hitting with so many people is that they do relate to it.
I think there's a certain, what really makes Ken work is just that he is very much an insecure guy, but he's not, maybe not too insecure is the right word. He's not insecure in the sense that he lashes out, you know, at other people. He's just like, oh man, I just feel, I wish I was like as cool or as like appreciated as Barbie. And then when he goes into the real world, he gets those ideas. When he's just kind of like interacting with Barbie, there's not really, it's like, considering what ideas like the Kens could get about patriarchy and about men from the real world, they could have got a lot more spiteful or venom filled.
Oh yeah, oh totally.
Oh my god, especially, oh god, I think had this movie been made, had the script been written now and they come out a few years later, there might have been some one or two people that had like the very Red Pill like influencer, like, oh, here's my Bugatti. It's just and I'm just so glad that's not the case because, oh my god,
I feel like it toes that line just incredibly well. Like, one of my favorite visuals in the movie is just like the big lineup of all the Kens and the Barbies on the beach with the Kens playing the guitar.
Oh, and they're all singing the same song.
Yeah.
And just the fact that
I wanna push you around. Well, I will.
And then this the, oh man, I felt this as a guy.
It's like, the cut, like the 4 hours later cut.
No. I felt it. No. What I felt as a guy was like, oh, when like all the Barbies just start texting, and it's like, oh, you're texting, oh, nothing, and then they just say, oh, I'll be back, or I'm just, and they just stand up and go to hang out with another guy, and it's like, oh my god,
oh yeah,
it's
totally
so evil, but it is such a good plan. Oh man.
And again, I feel like that's kind of like one of those positive call outs because I have definitely been in situations where, you know, like I go, like I haven't dated very much, you know, but I've definitely been in situations where I have gone to a party with a girlfriend and, she'll be hanging out with other guys at the party, and I have been territorial, and I feel shitty about it, but it's almost kind of like, it's one of those things that culturally is just sort of like embedded in your DNA, especially because you and I grew up, in the 90s and early 2000s when that kind of like territorial bullshit was a lot more like socially just kind of like the norm, like what you were almost expected to do.
I mean, that was like the underlying subtext for like a lot of male musicians music.
Right, exactly.
I was like the main protagonist in like a high school coming of age movie. It was like, oh, I need to get the girl, or like for any just regular drama that was around teens, it's like, oh, this guy just like having a love triangle or competing for, yeah, it's definitely. And I feel like the call outs, it was done not in a way to indict men so much as like, hey, these are some underlying problems that is, if anything, is limiting your sense of.
I'm gonna be honest with you, like as a man, I genuinely find this film helpful.
Yeah, because the thing is, the whole point was like Barbie was like, oh, like you're just insecure, just deal with it. It's more like, hey, like you have these feelings, and maybe you need to take time to like realize who you are. Like, so encourage yourself out.
I honestly love that message, Rohit, because that is literally like the whole take the time to figure out who you are is literally exactly the stage in life that I am in right now. So it's, that really resonated for me.
And I think what also was also good was it was actually kind of revolutionary that like Barbie and Ken are not like romantically, at least like not Barbie not enter Ken romantically, and I think Greta Gerwig, her being a female director, like she probably wanted this to be the case, and probably a director that maybe a male director they'd done the movie. I think they would have maybe not thought twice in having Barbie connect with Ken romantically. And then I think Greta Gerwig and her making this movie, Barbie not connecting with Ken at all. Like, hey, in order for Ken to be the avatar of all men to like succeed and do well, they can't just have a relationship be like the trophy for them self-actualizing. It's like, and that was kind of a smart call because like had Barbie reciprocated, like when Ken is like, oh, you're right, Barbie, and then try to kiss her, and I was like, no, like the whole point for Ken is that like, and also really for all the Kens is that they're supposed to grow and find themselves and not necessarily try to define themselves in relation to Barbie. Yeah, the whole point it could be it's just Barbie and it's just Ken, and it's like, and that like that line itself could be dumb when you think about it for too long, but the way it's delivered just hones in on the message of like.
Well, again, the way that the screenplay is able to, communicate these really, really striking ideas that are genuinely, I think, helpful to the broader culture and communicate it through that very childish lens, it's a masterstroke of writing. I really think it is.
And it's in the same movie where when characters throw clothes out in the middle of the sky.
Oh my God, dude. I love that.
Oh man. Oh, and I have to tell you this, Tiki, there's already like actual sweaters for the I'm Just Kenough that are
I'm not surprised.
And I'm definitely wanting to get that because oh my God, this is
I would get that. Yeah, the problem is I live in California and it's not usually cold enough to be sweater weather, but yeah.
Well, you just wait a few months, man. You can just come like what? October? It's definitely gonna get
cold. October, no. October it's still hot, buddy. But no, I honestly, even December, even like the dead of winter, it's like 60 degrees where I am, honestly.
60 degrees is not warm. That's like
it's not warm, but it's not cold either.
Is 60 for you just like, oh, you wear a shirt and a light jacket?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I get that. I don't really go for the sweater. I don't really wear sweaters as well if it's not especially cold. Although in my part in Texas, we've had some random snowstorm. We've had some not random at this point. We've had an annual snowstorm where we had to make sure to turn off the water beforehand, or else the water kind of freezes in the pipe.
Right.
Yeah, it's really like there was really no villain, per se. It was just like there was antagonists, with Ken and the Mattel CEO, but it was pretty,
I mean, even the Mattel CEO, like I said, it's like the dude is just kind of an idiot.
yeah,
Like more or less, he's very much kind of like a non-threat.
yeah.
Okay, let's see. Going into some of the comments here. Kogia says John Cena's cameo was funny. I wish he was in it more. I feel like John Cena is a good contender to get a beefier role in a potential Ken spinoff.
Yes. Oh my god. I also considering like Alan is kind of like I think the subtext is fair to say that he's sort of a closeted gay, individual. Did you get am I off base?
Maybe honestly, the way I read Alan, the whole like he reminds me of him is just very much that he's like non-confrontational and just sort of like passive in social situations and kind of like an introvert.
He's a Kentrovert.
Right.
Or Alan introvert. That
I know, just the whole idea of like, like Alan is confused about why there's only one variable of him. Yeah, I don't really understand that.
I would kind of love for like an Alan like character, but a girl in the Ken movie, just to have that kind of
I think they should just straight up have the Michael Cera Alan as in the Ken movie.
No, that would be great.
Yeah,
but
I think the interesting thing with the Ken movie is that how do you work Barbies into the Ken movie?
Well, wouldn't just the Kens be just the main focus, and Barbies would be like?
Well, yeah, but I mean, you can't have like all Kens all the time. You gotta have some female presence in there.
It can't be always all boys' night.
God. All right. Let's see. I would love it if they made more films in this universe. Yeah, just don't overdo it like Lego did. That's the key.
I mean,
and they're going to be tempted to overdo it. Although I will give Illumination credit because Illumination has not yet even. I don't think they have formally announced anything. Nintendo, like they are keeping those cards close to the chest.
I mean, how much of it is really Illumination and more so Nintendo really being, protective of its IP? Like, because I think that I feel like if Illumination had more leeway, they would have definitely announced like 2 or 3 Super Mario Brothers sequels.
That's true. That's a very good point. It's all Miyamoto.
Yeah.
God bless Miyamoto.
So I think a few nights ago, me and my buddy showed me like the the 90s Super Mario Brothers movie, and
Had you not seen that before?
What?
Had you not seen that before?
No. And
I would love to watch that movie with somebody seeing it for the first time.
Oh my God.
Really fun.
I'm just reading it. I'm just reading it. No, I'm not reading. I'm just watching it. And it's like, what is going on? And why was this movie made? Like, I was just like, why was this constructed the way it is? This is so wrong. It's like John Leguizamo just has like a romantic attraction to this girl that he just met like 1 or 2 days ago. And it's just like,
right.
And like Mushroom Kingdom's like this dirty, like, run down 80s. But
it's Mushroom Kingdom in that movie is very much wannabe Blade Runner.
Okay.
Eddie is in the comments. I'm sorry, man. I really didn't mean to ignore you. I can see how you like we keep going on tangents with these comments, but he says the idea of Barbie being feminist is weird. Like you said, it's like going to a Tarantino movie and going like, wow, I didn't expect this movie to be violent. Yeah.
I mean, my answer would have been like, it would be like, wow, I would expect the N-word to be said this often.
Oh my God. Or like going into a Fast and Furious movie and being like, holy shit, there were sure a lot of car stunts. God damn. Like, way to not be your brand, Fast and the Furious. All right.
Yeah. All right. And the Kokios is common. Ken was kind of the main antagonist, but he became a better person towards the end. There's no real villain by the end. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's probably what helps make the movie not feel as stereotypical as people would have been imagined to be. Because definitely, I think for any other version of the movie, they definitely would have had a more solidified villain just to kind of play the like formula of it. But the
I mean,
fact that
honestly, the fact that this movie is as unconventional as it is kind of a miracle.
yeah, I can really understand like some reviews like it's crazy how much Gerwig got away with this movie, and it's like the fact that they were so confident in releasing a movie like this in the middle of the summer, like with a star-studded cast, and it's like, man, there was no room for error because anything that would have felt off would have been unfortunately cannibalized by like the those types of people that you've acknowledged already in this
Yeah, but again, I feel like in this conversation, those types of people are very much getting drowned out because, unlike, it's like I'm sure She-Hulk is a fine show, but I don't think you can call it a great show by any means. This is a great movie, you know what I mean? This is a piece of art. This is not content, you know what I mean? And that's the difference, I think.
I mean, I really like She-Hulk, but I can definitely test that Barbie, its message is done really well, and I think in terms of its like production technical side, it's really, really well done. And I think Barbie is definitely going to be a movie that people are going to have, appreciation of long after its theatrical run. And I think this is a movie that's going to define this year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's kind of like an instant classic. It's one of those things where it's like you're sitting in the theater and you're just like, I just know this is going to just like permeate the film.
The ending scene, the ending line from Margot Robbie's Barbie. It's like, oh, I'm here for my gynecologist, and it's just like, oh, she's a real woman, and it's like, oh, what a way to end! What a way to end that.
Very ballsy, very ballsy. And I do love I kind of wish. I think the one thing that would have pushed this movie further that I was kind of hoping for, and I'm glad that it was at least acknowledged, is that I wish that we would have seen like the smooth naked blobs.
I feel like that would be something that may turn off test audiences.
No, I feel ya. And like I said, I'm glad they at least acknowledge that as part of the world.
I feel like that would have gone straight from like, oh, fun, very insightful, to like freaking like Adult Swim level humor that like you really appreciate that, but I don't think the mainstream audience would have respected it.
All right, let's see. Teddy's saying, "I am just Ted," so I can see the "I'm Just Ken" song as an anthem. Let's see. I thought Will Ferrell was going to be the main villain, but he wasn't really. Yeah, again, Will Ferrell is like the one thing where it's like I enjoyed him pretty much the entire time he was on screen. I'm just kind of like he's the one thing where it's like if you take him out of the movie entirely, I don't think you lose much outside of "Tell me your dreams, child." Like that's honestly like the one line I don't want to lose. that line is absurd.
Like, oh man, I bet you Gerwig heard that from the executive.
What? "Tell me your dreams, child"?
No. My friends are Jewish.
Oh, right. Totally.
I could imagine like an older executive saying that and like in a way that he's trying to become as cutesy but could come off as really freaking creepy.
Oh god. Oh man. All right. Well, I think I think we've pretty much addressed everything as far as like the technical Oscars. Best production design is a given. Like yeah. I think it's a front runner to win, right?
Yeah, best art design, like anything that revolve around just the overall set.
And it's like I was actually like ride or die for Asteroid City, and I love Asteroid City's production design, like the mountain backdrops and everything. Oh
yeah, no,
the miniature train, but this is just like a level up from Asteroid City. Costume design, I think, is going to be a shoe-in.
Makeup and hairstyling, especially for like weird Barbie.
I think those are probably the main three: costumes, hair and makeup, and production design. And then of course, I'm Just Ken for best original song. I mean, that is the one where if that does not get in, I am going to be upset.
I could see.
I mean, like if they don't nominate production design, they're just being stupid. But if they don't nominate I'm Just Ken, I'm going to be personally slighted. All right.
I think it could definitely sneak in a best original screenplay nomination.
I think it's technically going to be best adapted.
Best adaptation, right? That's true.
Yeah.
But I think it definitely could have a shot because my God,
I think it's got a shot at best adapted. I think it has a genuine shot at best picture, especially if some of these big profile releases in the second half of the year end up getting pushed back. Greta Gerwig, yeah, I could absolutely see Greta Gerwig getting a director nomination. I mean, I hope she does. Like, she didn't get one for Little Women, which I thought was ridiculous. All right. Tiki, do you agree with me that making Ken a full-on villain was something you would just assumed? Honestly, I was kind of going into it thinking that Will Ferrell was going to be the villain.
Or could it be like the real world was the villain?
What?
Or I was thinking that Will Ferrell would be the villain, or in a meta sense, like the real world is the villain.
Right.
Which it actually is, but not like a villain, but like the real world is the problem.
Kind of like the main source of the conflict.
Yeah.
How can I'm Just Ken not be nominated? He's singing about just being Ken. Yeah. Okay, and also just it was one of the first things I brought up, but I'm kind of curious what you think of the whole Kingsley Ben-Adir thing. How can he be so much more, like, how can he have such a good screen presence in this movie even when he doesn't have many lines? And then in Secret Invasion, he's just so wooden. Is it just a directing thing or what?
I will tell you this. It's like I was like, all right, the first episode of Secret, this is interesting. I like the vibes of it. Second episode, I was like, oh man, this is ramping up. And the third episode, I was like, all right, it's okay. The fourth episode, I was like, it's good, and there's a cool ending, and see how that works out. The fifth episode is like, and I just come to the realization, man, it's like, I don't think I like this show that much.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, Tiki.
I got there in like episode 3, honestly.
Like Tiki, like I've generally been a little bit more on the positive side for a lot of the Phase 4 projects, and especially in Phase 5. And so for me, I haven't been disappointed. Like this is probably my least favorite like MCU thing outside of Black. If we're talking about live action, it's like I'm feeling the same way about this Secret Invasion as I did about Black Widow. And I mean, what if it's like animation is kind of different, but like, man, I just feel like I honestly, the fact that Andor exists and it's under Lucasfilm, which is under Disney, they have the template, they had the freaking blueprint, and I think honestly, I feel like this show has made me kind of more inclined to believe that 6 episodes is very limiting. And like, because for this story, I think could have been done well in 8 to 12 episodes, or even 18. Honestly, imagine a Secret Invasion show was 18 episodes and was structured like Andor, or just like even a halfway decent version of The Americans, or like 1/10 of it.
Mm-hmm.
This show has so much potential and so much. And I honestly think just as
one of the things that I think is a huge missed opportunity with it is the fact that like you've got Rhodey is like, okay, he's the Skrull, and it's obvious that he is the Skrull, and there is no paranoia about like anyone could be a Skrull. Like that tension literally just does not exist.
There was more tension.
Rhodey is obviously the Skrull.
There was more tension when like in the Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. season where like LNDs were involved, and it's like,
oh, that's bad.
And I think back to it, it's like I think back to like the Winter Soldier, and just how much tension and worry there was when like someone whispered "Hail Hydra," and my like goosebumps. And like this should be the show where you are tense and biting your fingernails at like from beginning to end of each episode because you don't
literally the last 2 episodes I have like verbally yelled at in my laptop, oh my god, this is so boring.
I mean, I'm gonna be on.
We need to cut this short, by the way. We can't just like talk about Secret Invasion for 20 minutes at the end of a Barbie podcast. But
go back. It's like to go back to Barbie World, Barbie Land, to be more specific. It is a very well done movie. It's surprisingly well done in light of what people's preconceptions would be of the project, and in terms of, and especially if you're more of a cynical nature, this movie won me over, and I think this movie is going to define 2023 as like big movies like The Avengers defined 2012, and like Everything Everywhere at Once defined last year. Like this is a very big cultural moment, and it is well deserved because the movie is done on all aspects of movie making, and I think people go in with an open mind, and you can really the movie works. And very rarely do movies work on such a level that this movie works at.
Yeah, well said. Yeah. I think this combined with Oppenheimer, just the whole Barbenheimer of it all, that pop culture moment that we all just went through.
Yeah.
I mean, I truly hope that the studios like see that and see the cultural shift and not just get their asses together as far as, resolving the strike and actually, not being cartoonishly greedy supervillains. But I genuinely hope that they see the success of Barbenheimer as like a springboard for a new era of film where it's not about like, okay, let's just churn out as many of an established franchise as we possibly can. It's about quality. It's about good ideas. It's about originality. It's about filmmakers who have a voice. That's the kind of stuff that people want to see. That's the kind of stuff that people are thirsty for. And you can do those kind of things within the context of like a Barbie movie, but you got to have a strong voice behind it. And you can't just be a movie that is like a product that is designed by the studio committee. And
which is like amazing because like this movie has vision, but there's definitely like those like pieces of clothing that were highlighted with the in the middle of the sky. You can definitely tell Mattel's like, oh, okay, our profits are rising up. But the thing is, both can be like commerce and art. There's always going to be a tension, but I feel like when things are aligned, that's when movie magic comes about.
I mean, look at Across the Spider-Verse. Granted, I am definitely not happy about the situation that's come out in that movie about the conditions of the animators, but regardless of how we got that art, it is like objectively art. Like no one can look at that movie and not say it is art. And I am just so sick and burned out of this like Marvel, like, and I know I'm a lot more cynical about this than you are, but I'm so burned out on this whole like, like the red letter media, like, like consume product and then get excited about the next product. I mean, that is really that is where I think that is why all those movies, that is why June was the movie month that it was, like a historically bad month for blockbuster movies, is because everyone just started to wisen up to the whole like just consume this product thing. And it's like, no, I'm not just going to consume the product. I mean, like a movie like Transformers Rise of the Beasts, for example, it's objectively, honestly, not a terrible movie. It's definitely better than the Michael Bay movies. But man, is it a movie that just has very, very, very little to say artistically. It is very much just corporate product with a couple likable lead characters and, some fun synergy in the action set pieces. It's bare minimum passable 6 out of 10 entertainment. And like, I want so much more than that. And not every movie has to be like some, 10 out of 10 subversive masterpiece.
Mhm.
But you know, I'm just so sick of this whole like, you know, like, oh, okay, it's the 7th movie in this franchise and it's the 6th movie in this franchise. I don't know your thoughts about Indiana Jones, but like for my money, that was very much, watching that movie was very much an experience where it's like watching Dial of Destiny. I'm like, I actively like wish I was not doing this to myself, because it is like it is destroying the image of the character. I mean,
so for Dial of Destiny, to give you just sort of my brief thoughts, I liked it better than King of the Crystal Skull and Temple of Doom, if I'm being honest. Temple of Doom,
no, God. I'm sorry, Kingdom of Crystal Skull will accept. Temple of Doom is my favorite Indiana Jones movie.
Well, come on, Tiki. Over Raiders and Last Crusade? Like,
definitely over Last Crusade. Raiders, Last Crusade, I've never really been that crazy about, honestly. I think it's kind of, I think people prop that movie up too much just because it's Sean Connery, just because they like Sean Connery. And it's like, really, that movie is just kind of like recycling a lot of the Raiders tropes.
I conceded that.
Raiders of the Lost Ark, I truly feel like the reason I like Temple of Doom better than Raiders is objectively a better movie, but it is also the kind of movie that has just literally every moment of it has just been like injected into the pop culture osmosis so hard that it is impossible for me to watch that movie without the pop culture osmosis context to it. Whereas Temple of Doom is just an abrasively original, nihilistic mess of a movie, and I find it fascinating. Anyways,
I can appreciate that honesty, because man, that's because of that, how the way you described Temple of Doom is why it's what probably my second least favorite. And also like, because I'm Indian American, and then like the ways it depicts like the Indian cult, I it's all
well, it's not culturally, it's not great. Yeah, of course.
I was also weird out, and also like I don't know how you feel about this, about what you should expect from an Indiana Jones movie, but I feel like an Indiana Jones movie there should be a lot of globetrotting, and for Temple of Doom and King of the Crystal Skull, they're not as globetrotting as say like the other 3 movies are, like Dial of Destiny, Last Crusade, and Raiders of the Lost Ark. They are trotting the globe. You're going around, and it's like, oh yeah, you're really feeling the adventure. Right?
Okay, this is the last note I'm going to have on that, because we need to like just wrap this up. For me, I feel like Temple of Doom is basically like a whole movie of the opening set piece of Raiders of the Lost Ark. And for better or for worse, that is kind of like exactly what I want in an Indiana Jones movie. Like the actual like tomb raiding shit is like definitely my favorite part of the franchise. Mm-hmm. I think probably a big part of that is just because I'm a big Disneyland guy, and that's like a big emphasis of the ride. But all right. Anyways,
but going back to sort of the point about Barbie, I kind of agree in that there are a lot of movies that aren't great but are fine. But I think back to a quote from have you seen the Blackberry movie with Jay Baruchel?
Yes, that is one of my favorites of the year. That's definitely in my top
remember the conversation with Jay Baruchel's character and Glenn Howerton, where it's like, oh, perfect is the enemy of good, was like, well, good enough is just not worth it or not good.
Yeah, totally. And absolutely, especially in the rise of streaming.
And I think also, part of it's like, for me, I watch with my Alamo Draft House subscription, I watch movies like every week, and so $20. But the thing is, for people that don't have that plan, and also just like, one, like people don't like, the average person doesn't watch as much movies as you and I do in a year in theaters. And 2,
the only reason I watch as many as I do is just because I have the luxury of literally having a movie theater within walking distance of my house.
Yeah, and 2, theater prices have not gotten any cheaper, and with streaming, what I think this is kind of part of like this. I know we're kind of getting out, but the point made is that like with streaming being kind of like the place where all entertainment, even disposable entertainment, can be viewed, for the average person, especially the average family, people can just wait for passable movies to come out on streaming and not waste much money. And for people, for people in the industry that want movie theaters to be valuable, that want people to come out to see the movie theater, you need to have not just movies that you see on a big screen, but just really good movies. Because I think
like Blackberry is an example of a movie that's not really cinematic, but I'm still glad I saw it in a theater.
Yeah, no, I was glad to see the Tetris movie with Taron Egerton. Like that's not a movie. That's a movie that's an Apple TV, but it was like a really fun movie to appreciate. And I think that's sort of the thing the studios will have to kind of resolve. It's like, okay, for the how expensive movie theater prices are, if we just don't make movies that will just go straight to streaming and just hope streaming numbers increase exponentially, there's gonna have to be a bit of better quality control, and maybe part of it's like less movies being made, or just trying to make each individual movie.
And obviously the budgets are out of control. And
also, I think also for June, I think my only one big contention counter to that is that like a lot of big movies came out in June, right? And I think part of it was a COVID that delayed, and so
a lot of them weren't great. Like even movies I can defend, like Elemental was not great by any
stretch. But what I meant to say is that like these movies were kind of like they didn't have much like gas between. So I think for certain people, it's like, well, I don't want to watch all these movies that are coming out this month. I only have so much money to give.
I very much skip The Flash. I happily skip The Flash.
I think now people, if movies are coming out at the rate they are, and especially within each individual summer month or just month in general, like studios either need to space out like the big movies, that way they don't cannibalize each other's box office profits, or they need to make them better.
Or they need to start like more strategically coming up with other like Barbenheimer style, like counter programming.
Yes.
Because that's the problem, is that literally like Across the Spider-Verse, Transformers, The Flash, Indiana Jones, and even Mission Impossible, like literally all those movies came out literally within 1 week of each other, and they were all going for the exact same target demographic.
And me and my friends that watch all those movies, we watched it for only just $20 a month based on our, which is great. But like for if that's the thing, it's like movie studios need to really adapt to how people are watching movies in the modern day, and as such, with less people watching less movies because of ticket price being so expensive, and more, it's like, I think, do you remember how 5 or 10 years ago people were saying it's like, oh, young people are now watching more stuff on the internet than they are watching in like theaters or TV? And now it's not just young people. It's like, I think the average.
I am very much in that equation. I am addicted to YouTube video essays, and I find it hard to engage myself with anything but YouTube video essays. And the only thing I can tell myself to reassure myself is that at least I'm not addicted to TikTok.
God, I'm technically addicted to TikTok through YouTube.
Oh no!
And, oh my God. But just going to the point, I think for anyone that's still hearing us talk about basically everything, but Barbie. Barbie is a testament to quality talent taking an established property and doing things that are subversive, are thought-provoking, but still honor the spirit and meaning of said established IP. So for studios out there, if you're not wanting to commit much to the original material and are wanting to use established IP to market your products and whatnot, get people that understand the meaning that was made of said product and the meaning that it gives to regular people, and give them all the budgets and all of the support. That's what makes movies worthwhile. So people watch Barbie, watch just regular films, not the established IP, like films like Past Lives, Astro City, Blackberry. The Boogeyman movie was a pretty good horror movie.
That was pretty decent. Yeah, it wasn't great, but it was pretty decent.
Yeah.
I'm actually really super stoked for what is it called? The A24 horror movie. Yes, I am hype for that.
I'd be down to see that, and then you and I could probably do a review, spoiler cast on it.
If we have time, yeah.
Sure,
This
sure.
weekend, the Haunted Mansion movie's also coming out. So,
Man, hopefully it's better than Guardians 3 as per the debate.
right. Okay, well, I think on that note, yeah, I mean, obviously the Barbie movie, I think is very much going to be like, I think Barbenheimer in particular, just that it's like, it is like when people look back on 2023, not just as far as movies, but I think just like as far as pop culture as a whole, Barbenheimer is going to be the thing that people kind of think of.
Yeah.
Kind of like how The Dark Knight is sort of like very, very synonymous with 2008.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that's about it. Big thanks to Kogias, Richard's Victims, and Teddy for joining us in the comments. I'm sorry that we how was the new Ari Aster? Okay, I'm sorry, Richard. I'll just address it really quick. I really didn't like Beau is Afraid. I don't have time to get into it right now. You can watch our memoirs for April if you really want to see my opinion of that. But yeah, that Beau is Afraid was rough. It's got really great standout moments, but it's a mess. Yeah. I love Ari Aster too. I don't know.
The way in which I've heard people talk about this movie, it feels like Ari Aster's mother.
Oh, very much so. Very much so. I mean, but that's the frustrating thing about the movie is that it's very much like, yeah, like he was, he was smothered by his mother and now he has no self-esteem. It's that for 3 hours. Like, that is the one point that movie has to make.
And I wish that movie had kept its original title. Do you remember the original title of that movie?
Disappointment Boulevard.
Yeah, that's a way better title than Beau was Afraid.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, folks, we could go on all day about just the state of the entertainment industry and stuff. I'm glad we at least kept this under 2 hours. So, yeah, Richard's Victims, Teddy, Kogias. I'm sorry I wasn't as engaged in the comments this time around. It's just that this was just a very kind of chaotic, all over the place conversation. So, but I appreciate, as always, I appreciate you guys being here. And we will be back tomorrow. We are going to be doing our next Christmas in July. We will be talking Oppenheimer at some point. I'm just not exactly sure when. Rohit, I know you and Dragon are doing the Secret Invasion finale this week, so that's going to be an interesting conversation.
It'll be the first time since the Black Widow spoiler cast that critiques of a MCU. Well, what if it's kind of not great as a whole, but in regards to live action, I'll feel like I'll be the most pointed in my Secret Invasion critiques.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. See y'all later.
Yeah. It's time
Sublime! Tell me your dreams, child.